Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be 3 looks using one palette kind of tutorial. So I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. I know it's so old news, but I had filmed this like long back, but I finally got around to edit it. So I'm going to create 3 looks using this palette, and at the end of the video, I'm going to share my thoughts on this palette, whether you need it in your life or not. So let's first get started with the looks. Starting off with look number 1, first I'm taking the shade Cabana on a fluffy crease brush and start diffusing this in my crease and socket. This color is not going to show up much, but it will help out with the blendability of the other eyeshadows on top. Then moving on to the shade Coastline, and put this pretty much where I applied the first color. Diffuse it out onto my crease. Again, I'm taking my time, slowly building up the color to get the intensity that I want. With these lighter colors, you definitely have to build up the pigmentation. They're not going to be like super pigmented right off the bat. On a detailed crease brush, I'm going to take the shade Palms, the deep brown color from the palette, and start packing this in my inner and outer corners. And with whatever is left on the brush, I'm going to add that onto my socket, kind of like a bridge between the inner and outer corners to create that halo effect. Adding the color and socket like this is also going to increase the depth of your eyeshadow look. Then I'm going to clean up on the centers of my eyelids using some concealer to do like, a halo cut crease eye. If you have hooded eyes like I do, cut creases will really help to give the illusion that you have more lid space than you actually do. And wherever I applied the concealer, first I'm gonna add the shade Yacht, which is this bronzy golden color. And I'm using a flat shaded brush for this. Once I have the color, I'm going to slightly blend out the edges of the gold eyeshadow with the deeper brown color. And mainly on the centers, I'm not going to cover the Yacht color completely, but just on the centers of my eyelid, I'm going to add the shade Inheritance. This will add a lot of definition to your eyes, as you guys can see the difference here from left eye to the right eye. Because of that Inheritance shade, it adds that 3D effect because it is transitioning from that Inheritance to the bronze gold color and to the deep brown color. Then I'm going to add some falsies. Once the lashes are on, I'm going to add the color Inheritance in my inner corners just to brighten them up. Otherwise, especially since I have a darker color in my inner corners, it can look really dull if you don't add an inner corner highlight. Moving on to lower lash line, first I'm taking the shade Coastline and diffusing it pretty much everywhere on my lower lash line. This is a lighter color, so you can, be very generous with this. And closer to my lash line, since it's a darker color, I'm going to keep it closer. On a pencil brush, I'm taking the shade Palms and blending that out. And that's the close-up of the eyes. In this video, I'm just going to concentrate on all the eye looks. The rest of the makeup that I'm using on my face for each look will be listed in the description box down below for you guys. But for today, I'm just going to concentrate on the eyes because I don't want this video to be really long. Moving on to look number 2. First, I'm taking the shade Coastline and I'm going to buff this out into my crease. You guys know the drill. I'm gonna be as generous as I could with this shade because I want it to be pretty blown out all over my crease. Then I'm gonna go in with the shade Monte Carlo and concentrate this mainly in the outer V's of my eye. And I'm also going to put this in my socket and slightly blend it out into my crease, but I'm not gonna go really high like I did with the previous shade. Then I'm going to take this bright pink shade, which is called, I think it's called Bahamas. And on a detailed crease brush, I'm going to just concentrate this on the outer corners. Then I'm going to do a half cut crease because I feel like all the shadows from this palette stick better to your eyelids when you have a sticky base on top. So that's why I'm just going to apply the concealer, but I'm not going to set it with any kind of powder because I directly want to go with the eyeshadows on top of the concealer, which has a sticky base. And then on top, I'm going to add the shade Inheritance. I absolutely love this color. It's like a true gold and it's very bright and very, perfect for spring and summer. So I'm going to apply this wherever I apply the concealer. And right where the gold shadow and the pink matte shadow collide, I'm going to add the shade Palmero just to create that transition from gold to that pink shimmery shadow and to the pink matte shadow. Taking the shade Canes on a pencil brush and diffusing that on my lower lash line just to add some kind of purple on the lower lash line. Then to deepen up the lower lash line even more, I'm going to take the shade Palms, the deep brown color, and add it very close to my lower lash line. Then on the inner 1/3 of my lower lash line, I'm going to add the shade Palmero and diffuse it out, blend it out with the other eyeshadows that I put on my lower lash line. For my inner corners, first I went in with the shade Sails, but I didn't like it as much for my skin tone in my inner corners. So that's why on top, I went in with the shade Inheritance. I like the combination of this, but just the color Sails on its own was not very flattering for my skin tone in the inner corners. But on the brow bone highlight, I'm still going to use the color Sails. I like that on my brow bone, but not on my inner corners. Then I added some falsies. Now I'm going to add a NYX Epic liner. I'm going to add a tiny wing, very small one, nothing too intense. If you have difficulty doing your wing liner like I do, the easiest way to do it is first add the lashes. Then the lashes will act as a nice guideline for you to do your wing eyeshadow. That's the trick I use like all of the time. So that finishes look 2. Every eyeshadow that I used for this look blended beautifully, and I really like how colorful this look is. Moving on to look number 3. First, I'm taking the shade Coastline on a fluffy crease brush and diffuse it everywhere in my crease. I want this color to be really blown out and show up when I open my eyes. I'm going to slowly build up the color until I get the intensity that I want. Then I'm going to take the shade Monte Carlo and apply this pretty much where I applied the previous color, but I just don't want to go as high as I did with the shade Coastline. I want to keep this closer to my socket, but I still want this color to be a little bit in the crease as well. As you can see, the best way to apply these eyeshadows, especially the bright pink colors, is to do patting motions instead of swiping. You first want to press the color onto your crease, then slightly blend out the edges. That's the best way to get the most pigment out of these eyeshadows. And then moving on to the shade Canes, I'm going to apply this in my inner and outer corners to start building the halo eye. But honestly, this is the color that I had most difficulty working with. It just doesn't want to stick to my outer corners especially. And this is that kind of shade which is very difficult to do because it's deep purple. Usually in almost all palettes, these are the colors that don't want to blend out really well on top of the other matte shadows. With this palette, it's exactly the same. The best way to get this eyeshadow to stick to your eyelids is to have a sticky base underneath. Otherwise, on top of other matte shadows, it's just not going to blend out really well. So I did struggle quite a bit to get this color to look like this. I had to go back and forth into the palette into this eyeshadow to get the intensity that I have right here. But yeah, it took me a really long time to get to this point, which I edited out completely because we would be here for at least 20 to 15 minutes blending out the one eyeshadow. But anyways, to clean up on the centers of my eyelids, I'm just using a concealer here. And on top, I'm going to add the shade Seashells, this aqua blue color. This has to be my favorite out of all the colors here because it's very unique and I don't own anything like this in my collection. And right in between that seashells color and the bright pink color, I'm going to add the shade Mediterranean just to add that definition and also that beautiful transition from the light blue to the Mediterranean color to the bright purple color. Since the seashells was taken away a little bit when I was blending out the other eyeshadows, I'm just adding that back. This will add this nice 3D look to your whole eyeshadow. Then moving on to lower lash line, first taking the shade Monte Carlo and diffusing it out all over. Then on top, I'm going to go in with the shade Canes and do the exactly same thing that I did with the shade Monte Carlo. And from inner corners, I'm taking the shade Inheritance and I'm going to add some falsies here. And that completes look 3. As you guys can see, the look is really pretty, but I did have to struggle quite a bit to get it to look like this because that particular shade Canes was giving me a lot of trouble. So my thoughts on this palette, I think it's a very unique and colorful palette for spring and summer. It's perfect. If you're someone who is into colorful eyeshadow looks, I would say definitely give this one a try because the colors in this palette are very unique to me. I don't own any palette in my collection that has these kinds of tones and colors. You might think, oh, it's a regular blue, but no, it has this nice shift to it that it's very unique. Once you apply it on your lids, it transforms into a different color and looks very unique and special. The shimmers are very pigmented, very soft. Almost all the mattes blended beautifully except the deep purple one, which I showed in look 3. I had a lot of difficulty working with the color, and even after that I just cannot get that eyeshadow to stick to my lids properly every time I try to use that palette. Especially the dark colors are really pigmented, and the light colors for my skin tone, I do have to build them up a little bit to get the intensity. But keeping regular consumers in mind, unless you're someone who tends to go for colorful eyeshadows looks, I don't think you need this, especially if you're someone who tends to stick to light, neutral colors and warm colors. I don't think you will like this palette, or you will get a lot of use out of this palette. If you're an eyeshadow junkie and if you like to collect different kinds of palettes, I'd say this is very unique and it will definitely make a good staple in your collection. But other than that, if you're not going to get a lot of use out of this, I don't think you should spend your $45 on it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. All in all, I think it's a good palette. But it just totally depends on your personal preference whether you like to go for colorful eyeshadow looks or not. So that completes this video, and that's like my mini review on the ABH Riviera palette. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you find this video helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will see you all in my next one. Bye.